Welcome to Season 2 of the Leopard Podcast. This season, I speak with visionary lodge owners operating in Africa's most remote and pristine regions. Get ready for tales of deep commitment to conservation, extraordinary wildlife, and the dedication it takes to run a lodge at the edge of the world. Hi, Simon, and welcome to the Leopard Podcast.
Hi, Dana. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to be speaking to you today, first of all because we're talking about the Okavango Delta, which is one of the most extraordinary places you can visit in Africa, and secondly because you're the owner of Beagle Expeditions, which is one of my favorite safari experiences I've ever had, and we'll get into all of that a bit later, I know, and that's the exciting part. But let's start by talking a little bit about the Okavango Delta. Can you tell us why the Okavango Delta exists? Because really it shouldn't.
Well, I can give you the long answer on that, or I can give you the highlight package. It's basically a whole freak of events that have happened over several 100,000 years that has resulted in a remarkable ecosystem. So geologically, two major events. The extension of the East African Rift Valley has resulted in a bunch of fault lines that basically capture the Okavango River and create an inland delta. It's technically speaking, it's an alluvial fan, but it's the only system of its type where the water never gets to the ocean. It all comes into this very flat and shallow system. About 96% of all the water is lost to the atmosphere. So that creates a very unique set of circumstances. In addition to that, much of the water draining into the Okavango comes off ancient Kalahari sands, which are very nutrient poor, which is an essential part to the whole equation. You can imagine with a whole lot of water coming into a flat, shallow area and evaporating out, there's a lot of salts and minerals that are left behind. And having nutrient poor water coming in the first place plays a major role in that. And then there are a bunch of biological factors that also play their role. Some keystone species like hippo and termites, papyrus, that play their role in spreading the water and also in cleaning the salts out of that water, resulting in an incredibly neutral in terms of pH ecosystem and an abundance of life. And then on top of that, and as sort of the final part of it, the system, even from the top of the catchment, is very shallow or with very little gradient. So we end up with a flood system coming in the heart of our dry months. So as we start getting into the dry May, June, July part of the year, where most of southern Africa is drying out quite significantly, that obviously reduces carrying capacities in terms of what is available to eat. We have this flood that comes in with nutrients and wets the whole area, and we have a growth season that happens with that. And then as we go into the really hard dry period, which is what we're going into now, where it's really hot and dry, the water starts receding, leaving really well-watered and eutrophied floodplains, and another growth season on top of that. And then obviously our rains start kicking in around December. So essentially the Okavango has always got a growth season. So for all of the herbivores that live in the system, there's always good food, and therefore an abundance of wildlife, and obviously the predators and everything that follow that. So in a nutshell, I think that sums it up.
It's a fascinating geology and whole ecosystem to explore more. But besides the geology, which you've explained very well, beginner's level, thank you. What else makes the Okavango Delta such a unique safari experience in terms of the activities, in terms of the wildlife you can see? What makes the Delta so different from other safari experiences people can have in Africa?
I think one of the starting factors is the diversity of activities that you can do out here. So obviously there's the traditional game drive element. There's also Mokoro activities with the seasonal floods coming in, and cruising out on a Mokoro is a really special experience. It's quiet, it's very tranquil. There's also the option to walk and get out on foot. And then a big factor to all of that is the exclusivity. Much of the Okavango is run on a high-cost, low-impact model. So we have exclusivity on a very unique level. There are vast concessions with very few visitors in them. So you're not seeing a lot of people when you're out on safari. And then I think probably one of the most key elements to the whole thing is also our people. We live in a very peaceful nation. We've never had conflict, and it's resulted in a very warm and friendly people that play a huge role in the success of our industry. It's a wonderful country to visit with very friendly and warm, welcoming people.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my clients who come to visit the Delta, especially, or Botswana in general, always comment on how the people are the most unexpected surprise for them, and how warm and welcoming, and how they remember the names of their guides years after they'd visited the Delta and the safari lodges there. So I agree with you on that. What about a season to visit the Delta? You've spoken now, we're busy recording in October. You've spoken about it being the hot, dry season, which is when I visited Beagle. It was incredible to see the dynamics playing out with the elephants and all the predators during this hot, dry season. But what are the other seasons that people can visit the Delta in, and is there any right season? I'm often asked, like, what is the right time to visit the Delta? Is there a right time, and what is that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'm asked that often myself. I firmly believe that look, from a guiding point of view and living out here, every time of the year has an incredible element to it. If we run it through season by season or blow by blow, the rain season, December through to the end of March, is extraordinary. It's a time of abundance. There's a huge array of wildlife giving birth to animals. With the rains comes great growth, so there's a huge amount of food. The insect life is prolific, which brings in a huge amount of migratory birds. So it's just this time of absolute abundance across the system. Going into the flood season, the beginning of May, and then through the winter months, it's traditional safari season. It's very comfortable climate. There's not much fluctuation in terms of temperatures. Look, it can get quite chilly in the mornings if we have a little cold front system come in. It can drop below zero, but that just makes coffee taste much better around the fire in the morning. And the bush is quite open, so the visibility of things is good. And then as you start moving into the hot dry, so as you mentioned when you were here, going sort of going September, October, November, it's really warm, but it creates this massive dependence on the permanent water sources. And so right across the Delta, hands down, the best game viewing time of the year is that October, November time. And yeah, it obviously wet kokois on game drive and things like that to keep the temperatures down play a big role. But it's just wonderful. And then while we plodding away through the heat, we have the excitement of the rains coming again. So we have the cycle of every time of the year. For me, if you have the opportunity to come at different times of the year, over time, it'll be up to someone to decide what they think is the best. But there's always a growth period. There's always an exciting element and a change in the seasons. Going into October, November now, we game driving in areas that we haven't been into for the last 6 months in vehicles. Obviously, places aren't Mokoroing and boating anymore, but you've got all this land that's now available. So it just changes, and all the changes are wonderful.
Yeah, I really like that advice to try and travel at different times of year and see which time of year you prefer, because perhaps you prefer a different time of year to what other people think is the best time of year to go on safari. And it's great to spread out visitors across the different seasons. Simon, you touched on a little bit before, but I'd like to just explore a little bit more with you about the Botswana's model of an exclusive, low-impact tourism model, which means that there's a limited number of lodges and beds available in the Delta. And why did Botswana go that way, and has it been successful?
Yes, so it has been very successful. We are also currently diversifying into different tourism models in parts of northern Botswana where there are some areas that are getting a little bit more busy, but it's in selected areas that is happening. And I think it's a good thing ultimately, diversify our product offering, which helps with diversifying our economy and opportunity for people. But by and large, much of the Okavango is that high cost, low impact model. So I think the primary inspiration for that was exactly that. It's a high cost, so there's really good income earned with a small impact on an area. So that your private concession areas are contributing significantly directly to the government coffers. One of the big elements is we pay all of our regular taxes and things, but we also pay a land rental fee, which is more or less a set fee per year. But on top of that, we also pay a 6% resource royalty, which comes directly from our revenue, or 6% of revenue. So the earnings for the government, directly to government, are huge. And ultimately, it results in a wonderful safari product because you've got that exclusivity. But I think it also it helps in terms of the bigger conservation picture because it's a huge earner. In Botswana, our diamond industry has pretty much collapsed, and tourism has taken over as the number one economic contributor. And so it bodes well for the long-term conservation because you got to look after where your money comes from, basically.
And you don't see crowding at all in the Delta compared to other places that have recently been in the press about like really crowding on safari. So as you mentioned, the experience for the guest is just wonderful, being in such an exclusive environment.
The impact is also a lot less on the ecosystem. When you're in an area that's only got 4 or 5 vehicles operating in 20, 30,000 hectares, it's a much smaller impact.
Yeah, and in such a fragile ecosystem.
Yeah.
The other thing that people often ask me about is the cost of coming on safari in Africa. It is more expensive than going to other parts of the world, for example, Asia. Perhaps speaking as a lodge owner yourself, you can give people an idea of what it takes, like how much it costs to operate a lodge in such a remote part of the world, and how that contributes, along with the conservation fees and preserving the environment, to a higher cost for people to come on safari here, but a much better experience.
Yeah, so I think, in terms of experience, I don't think it's necessarily better than other places. I think it's very different, which is key to the whole equation, which is wonderful. That's I think the joys of travel. In terms of running operations out in remote areas, yes, the costs are huge. Equipment takes a hammering, and then getting stuff in and out of camps, logistics is significant. We as an example, in our camps, it's a 7 to 8 hour drive on some pretty heavy going roads to get our supplies in on a weekly basis. We also play a big role in supporting local communities with different community projects, anti-poaching operations, and then, as I mentioned, a huge chunk of the dollar, every dollar that we earn ends up in the government coffers. So it is an expensive operation, but there is the feel good element that comes with that you're contributing to a big picture conservation of the wildlife and the ecosystem that you're visiting, but also to the local communities living adjacent to those areas. So yeah, it definitely is expensive, but the running costs are such.
So yeah, now we can talk about Beagle and Beagle Expeditions and the Queenie Trails. What I really loved about what you and your wife have done there, Simon, is that it's so unique and different to any other safari experience that I've had. And mostly what I was so impressed is how you've redefined luxury. Sometimes you find people going in the opposite direction for luxury. So more and more consumption almost. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but doing extra. Whereas I think the luxury that you've got with Beagle is by taking the essential experiences on safari and making them absolutely incredible. So I really like that it's so unique. It's redefining luxury. How would you describe Beagle and what you guys have, what you aimed to achieve and what you've been able to achieve in the years that you've been operating?
Yeah, well, what we try to do, I spent a lot of time private guiding and guiding in some of the high-end lodges in Botswana and across the continent, and just realized, why compete with a luxury hotel in Paris or in London? You know, what we have here is this space and experience. So we focused our attention on experiences. Obviously, the core elements of someone's stay that need to be done well, comfortable sleeping arrangements, all of those sorts of things, and good food and good wine. But the focus was rather on experience than on material parts of it. And it's been an interesting journey. You know, I've had to give up on a few of the things I stood up for in the beginning. One, as an example, we used to have an outdoor bathroom set up that was totally open on one side to the bush. It was wonderful. I thought it was wonderful. But it didn't work so well when someone's having a morning shower and an elephant came and browsed on the tree next to them. So we've had to change a few of those things. But I think by and large we've stayed true to what we've believed in. The feedback has been wonderful. I think it brings people down to it. You know, making purposeful decisions like not having Wi-Fi, I think, is also an important element for people to reconnect with family and themselves. I think it's working. Touch wood, it continues to.
Yeah, you mentioned Wi-Fi. It was one of the things I was really nervous about, running a small business, not having Wi-Fi for the 4 days that we were at Beagle Expeditions, but it was actually the best thing. I try to regularly do that now, go for a few days on holiday without any cell phone reception. I just put my phone on airplane mode, and that, I think, is wonderful. I hope you can stick with no Wi-Fi, because I'm sure you get pressure from guests. The other thing which I really loved was just the quality of sleep that I had. I slept so well on the bedrolls. I think you've got raised beds now, but just those bedrolls on the floor when I was there, just such a good quality of sleep, hearing the birds around you like we can hear in the background. You're actually in the Delta at the moment. If listeners are listening on audio, I highly suggest watching this one on video, because you can see where Simon is in the Delta there. It's amazing. The food, best food I've had. Just the ingredients, the simplicity of it, but the freshness, like everything. Simon was just fabulous there. Sleeping in tents. I love camping. But it's not the camping that I did as a child. It's really an elevated experience for people. So, well done to you and your team on creating this unique spot.
Well, the sleeping arrangements are most certainly, the credit goes to Marlene. My wife was insistent on Egyptian cotton linen and all of those very nice comforts. So that goes to it. But, you know, I think this is the key to it, Diana. You come back to the basics. You are comfortable. You are lying in a tent where there's no fridge running in the corner or any other polluted noise. Our tents are very open to the bush. And so you're in it. You're immersed in it. And I think that filters through quite strongly to the experience.
I agree. Also, Simon, you have touched briefly on how you partner with the local community, especially around the concession that you have. Can you give a few more examples of how the community has improved their lives by visitors coming to Beagle Expeditions and contributing a nightly rate to the community levy?
So we work with an organization called the Wild Entrust, run by Tico and Leslie McNutt. They are quite an exceptional couple that has really embraced the importance of community. And, you know, in the beginning we had all these grand ideas of how we were going to do things, and now I just realized I didn't have time. So we partnered up with him, and we basically we started off with a sort of a self-imposed $30 levy per person per night that we put into projects in the village. We've actually just recently upped that now to $100 per person per night to try and really change that impact. So that's divided into two facets. One is going to be a continued drive into the Hubble community, and then we also are involved in a really jacked up anti-poaching operation together with Singita and the African Horseback Safaris guys, who are our neighbors in the concession. But yeah, I mean, simple stuff that we take for granted that really makes a huge difference to people's lives. So the Wild Entrust are running some wonderful projects there. Last year we managed to put in water reticulation around the village so that people had better and quicker access to water. And something small like that, where we walk into our bathroom and turn on the tap, you take total disregard for what it means not to be able to do that. You have to walk a long distance with a bucket and collect water. It makes a big difference in people's lives. And then Wild Entrust has several really, really insightful projects on the go that we're involved in. So there's a herding for health program where we're trying to get people to put their cattle into a super herd. TICO was instrumental in getting policy changed at a governmental level to allow for quarantining of cattle before slaughter because of foot and mouth issues in Ngami land around the Okavango. And that's been a game changer in terms of incentivizing people to put their cattle in these super herds that are now protected. They've got guys herdmen who go out, and so they're mitigating human-wildlife conflict or cattle-predator conflict issues. There's a wonderful project going on with a cooperation of women and a vegetable garden operation that's happening. And the goal, there's still some lessons being learned there in terms of what to grow and how to grow it. But the long-term goal there is that all of us within the concession, and Kijira are also involved in this, to purchase the vegetables from the community. So just projects to try and, instead of it being a handout, to give economic opportunity that develops from tourism, from safari happening on your doorstep. And I think these things are essential to develop because, living, and again, similar to the water story, it's all wonderful going on safari and seeing elephants and seeing lions, but for the communities living adjacent to the Okavango, and it's not unique to Botswana, across the African landscape, it's having wildlife on your doorstep is a hindrance. Elephants come in and they smash your crops in one night. And for subsistence people who are subsistence farming, that's a mega blow to their food resources for the remainder of the year. Same goes for lions or hyenas or leopards killing livestock. It's a huge blow, and so we need to step in and change that around to seeing the benefit of having this wildlife around, and the only way to do that is the economic incentives that come with economic opportunity.
Yeah, and employment, hopefully, as well as on top of all the things that you've spoken about. And talking about employment, your guides are all local Botswanan guides. There's such excellent level of guiding at Beagle Expeditions. Actually, in the Okavango Delta in general, in my experience, and in Africa in general, I think guiding and having a good guide is the number one key ingredient to having a successful holiday for guests. The guides are just so important. They're the portal through which the guests understand the ecosystem that they're in, the animals that they're seeing, the culture of the local place. So you've also been a guide for yourself for many years, and I know that this is a really important part of what you do at Beagle. How do you go about finding the best guides, training them, and making sure that they are given everything that they need to be a star like they are?
So I think the first thing, just to add to what you said there, what we're trying to do, and I believe what safari is all about, it's experience. And as you say, the guides hold that experience in the palm of their hands. I've always said, if the kitchen burns down and guests come back after having an amazing walk or an amazing game drive, and they get peanut butter sandwiches for dinner, they'll be fine with that because they've had such an amazing experience out in the bush. So for us, the guiding element is the cornerstone of our operation. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because I'm a guide myself, but we've put a huge focus on our guiding team, and it was, I've been in the guiding game for the past 20 years almost, and just along the way I've met some incredible characters who are exceptionally good at their jobs. So we've managed to lure a couple of those guys into the system. A huge element for us obviously has also been adept on foot, Mokoro, and being totally independent, because we don't have other people in our concession. There's no responding to radio calls and sightings. We literally have to find everything ourselves. So our guiding and tracker team element is a major focus for us. So same on the trackers front, our trackers are all qualified polars. They're on all the activities, and our trackers work with a specific guide. In terms of training, we spend a lot of time out in the bush together. Off season, we often head off into camp for a couple of days at a time, and just go and play. I think there's obviously the foundation for the training has been done in the past when we were all a lot younger, and now the key is to just staying excited about what we do. So going out and playing, going to catch butterflies and see which it is and what's going on, and get into the nitty-gritties that sometimes you can't do on safari. And then obviously also have a bit of fun pre-season on the rifle range, just getting ready for a walking season. That's often filled with a lot of banter and a good bonding session.
So perhaps the best place to end now, Simon, is with a humorous story. If you can think of one from your many, many years of guiding and being in the business, or perhaps not a story personally, maybe a story you've heard secondhand from others. I'm sure there's plenty around. Do you have one that you can share with our listeners?
There's a story that's always cracked me up that I was witness to. I wasn't 100% involved in, but had a good chuckle. Many years ago, I worked in one of the lodges in the Okavango Delta, and we had a guide who's retired now. He's one of our legendary guides in the Okavango, a guy by the name of Tsile Tsile. And Tsile was phenomenal, but he had full-on proper phobia for snakes. It was an uncontrollable thing. I mean, the one day I was watching a python and a big crocodile, like a 3-meter crocodile, have a long battle in the water, and I eventually had to drive out of the sighting to go and pick up Tsile's guests to bring them in to come and witness this thing, because he just would have nothing to do with it. And Tsile was also a renowned jokester in camp, and the camp that I was working in, we had an incredible team of guides, and there was always pranks going on and abuse, and it was really a fun place to work. And Tsile, the one day we were at the airstrip picking up guests, and we had a younger guide in camp, Pete Meyerberg, who Tsile was promptly getting off the air, or guests got off the airplane. The pilot promptly handed Tsile 2 brown vomit bags full of vomit. And Tsile was very unimpressed with this and literally turned around to Pete and said, "You deal with this." And Pete was obviously very unimpressed himself, and so he set up his revenge. So one day we were sitting at the airstrip, and Tsile's favorite move, and we always used to box with him about this, because he would have his cooler box on his seat, he'd load his guests into the car, and he'd just leave. And the protocol was you have to sit and watch and wait for the aircraft to take off safely and everything. And Tsile he'd book out, and we would then have to watch his aircraft take off. So Pete decided that the revenge would be simple, and he put a rubber snake in Tsile's cooler box. And as Tsile was driving off away from the airstrip, as he always used to do, he'd open it up and start handing waters to his new guests. And he grabbed this rubber snake, and he exited the vehicle without even opening the door, and left the vehicle to run, jammed into the sand and stall, and he wouldn't come near the vehicle.
Oh, I can just imagine this unfolding. Oh, what a good revenge.
With all of us standing at the airstrip waiting for it to happen, so he had a good audience of spectators.
I wish that had been in the days of cell phones so you could have recorded and had footage of this.
Yes, thank goodness we didn't have cell phones in those days.
Yeah, in the bush. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Simon, so I really hope that this conversation has inspired people to want to visit the Delta and want to visit Beagle Expeditions and your beautiful Queenie trails. What should people do if they want to come to the Delta and visit Beagle?
I think that they should get hold of you. I've always believed that a travel specialist to Africa is an essential part of the whole plan of getting out here. You know, there's a lot of intricacies, as you'll know, in terms of travel, where to go, how to get there. There are a whole lot of little tricks to getting things done in Africa. And so, yeah, my advice would be get hold of a good travel specialist and get going with that.
And mention Beagle, say you want to have a good experience in the Delta, an adventure, and this is
that as well. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Simon. Seeing your background there has made me want to come to the Delta again. It's been too long. I need to make a trip out there. So thanks for your time and for sharing all your knowledge with our listeners.
Well, thanks very much for having me. And we'll hopefully catch you on this side soon.
Love it.
Thanks very much, Diana. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening. Leopard specializes in curating extraordinary journeys. Get in touch with us to help you plan the trip of your dreams.